Well, unfortunately, gents, the sideshow to NRL's grand final week has been a scandal surrounding the Melbourne Storm. Videos began circulating in the last 24 to 48 hours showing Brandon Smith and Cameron Munster in a room where white substances can be seen on the table. And Buzz, the Integrity Unit, has spoken to Brandon Smith, Cameron Munster and Chris Smith, the second rower today. So
Chris Lewis?
Chris Lewis, sorry.
Chris
so
Lewis,
what have they said?
The three players won't admit that they did anything wrong, and they won't talk about the substance that was on the table at the time. But the Integrity Unit believe they have enough, and Andrew Abdo and Peter Volandis believe they have enough to charge three players for bringing the game into disrepute, spoiling Dally M night, unwarranted headlines for the game and what's already been a tough year. My mail is that they are going to be suspended, most likely 2 weeks, could go to 4 weeks, but they won't start next year. And fines are going to be very heavy. Cameron Munster will be fined up to $40,000. Brandon Smith, $20,000. Reece Walsh from the Warriors, probably $5,000, same with Chris Lewis. They'll do it on their paychecks, but they're going to come down hard on them. It's very hard to prove if they did the wrong thing, and there's no drug testing this time of the year. They don't have the right with their RLPA agreements to demand they undergo tests.
Well, why is that?
I don't know. It's just in the player contract. It's seen as...
But don't they have rights if there's under suspicion to then question the player and say, would you mind taking this drug test?
I would have thought so, Vonnie. I would have thought so.
So this is not a random incident.
Whatever happens, they're going to be charged, they're going to be suspended and fined very heavily for bringing the game into disrepute.
I find it interesting, though, that when you had the Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor incident some years back where they were caught on video doing it and the NRL suspended them for 2 weeks. Brett Naden went for 4 weeks last year. These two have refused to even admit what the substance is, so there's been no cooperation, yet the penalty's the same.
And go back further and you talk about, so regardless of they haven't taken any drugs test, but they've certainly brought the game into disrepute.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look at the punishment that was handed out to Mitchell Pearce years ago.
That suit brings the game into disrepute, jeez.
Oh, and this was Brandon Smith.
Gosh, he looked uncomfortable last night,
his mum
didn't he?
and Cameron Munster too. They looked miserable, both of them, at the Dally M's last night. They looked like they wanted to be anywhere else other than there, because obviously the story had broken and the video was doing the rounds, and you could see how uncomfortable they were. And I guess it probably unfairly put Craig Bellamy into a position where he had to front everyone's questions, and he was there representing the club. Obviously his players had let him down, but the questions were then to Craig Bellamy, who was nominated for Coach of the Year. Do you know about the video?
Of the year.
Well, yeah,
his press conference after it was inundated with questions about his two players.
So where was the club in all this?
Well, Justin Rodsky, I tried to ring before I came into this show last night. I tried to ring. I'm still waiting for him to return the call. He's the Chief Executive Officer of that club. At least Frank Panisi returned a phone call. I think it's really bad. You saw how the Warriors handled Reece Walsh. They got on a video call, they came clean, it was done one day.
That just shows Rodsky's out of his depth, Buzz. The fact that he can't manage his situation as the boss of the club is embarrassing.
So this is the Kenty. This is the statement from the Storm, and I say that, you know, like, it's basically, it doesn't say anything, saying that the club and the players are cooperating with the investigation, but they're not in a position to comment any further.
That's just a cop-out.
Which falls flat compared to how the Warriors handled it.
That's a cop-out.
And the fact that Craig Bellamy was left unsupported.
They've all got this on cut and paste now, this same statement. So when a player gets in, because it's under investigation, we can't comment. When the investigation is closed, I'll put out a little thing that'll basically say nothing. The fact is that they haven't adequately explained what was going on here in this video. The fact is the players have refused to cooperate with the investigation by not revealing what it was. So there should be no sympathy there. And from that point of view, like, the Warriors are textbook how it should have been handled.
Of course they were.
They came out immediately, so they apologised, they showed genuine remorse, and they said they won't do it again. That's what Reece Walsh said, and they handled it quickly.
And that story went away because
it was done and dusted
all the
in a
ownership
day.
was there.
Done and dusted. Meanwhile, Rodsky's hiding under a desk, hoping his phone doesn't ring. Like, he's one of the biggest clubs in the country. Two of his best players are in these questionable circumstances being investigated by the game, and he won't sit there and manage the situation. Like, how did he get his job, this bloke? Seriously. He's supposed to be running the club. And look, they'll pay a penalty, these guys, but even by the NRL standard, the fact that they're looking for a similar penalty, Mitch Pearce got 10 weeks for a stupid video with a dog that someone snuck.
And what
now,
And a $100,000 fine.
and a $100,000 fine. Now, we all agreed that was over the top, right?
Right, yeah.
Completely. But where you're really going to send the message, in my opinion, is the match suspension. 2 weeks doesn't cut it. 2 weeks doesn't cut it. The money, the 40,000, the Saints players got 40,000. What really hurt that team was the suspensions to the players. That's what hurts.
I'm saying they
that's
can't
the prevention.
prove anything other than that they brought the game into disrepute.
Okay, this is what the NRL does. That's what the NRL does. You know what? If the CEO of the Storm has got any go in him, he sits there and he calls these two in and says, mate, this is what the NRL has imposed on you, but our standards are higher than this. Because this is how Melbourne always sell themselves, that they have standards above just the average NRL.
Well, we hear about the culture.
Well, we always hear about that.
Yeah.
So this is where this boss, if he's worth 2 cents, this is where he pays his way.
The standards of the game have to be higher too. Because while anything you see in our game, and there's hundreds of young men and they're always going to make mistakes, but they are in a privileged position, and if they make the mistakes, they have to be punished for them because it sets a standard. And I don't think 2 match suspensions sets any standard.